Welcome to the Motorsport Review. I'm your host, Perry Brown, and joining me tonight is absolutely no one. Yes, I'm doing this on my own. Bit of bad timing, bit of bad planning, but just unable to time this when I would be able to do anything other than record something on my own. But the British Grand Prix was just so good that I couldn't avoid doing any kind of review. So something slightly different. I'm going to do it Ted's notebook style. I've got actual notes in front of me and I'm just going to run through them, give my views on it, and do it as possibly a shorter sort of clip on this. If you like what I do tonight, then please let me know. As always, it's always good to hear any feedback and know whether I'm doing anything right. So as I say, the British Grand Prix was a brilliant race, but it always is, isn't it, at the Silverstone circuit. Bit of rain, bit of unpredictability in the weather, and we get such an epic race. And the way it started as well, obviously with the rain falling before the start, everyone starting on intermediates. Well, nearly everyone starting the actual race on intermediates, some obviously taking that gamble, and just really threw up an interesting race to watch. And let's start then with McLaren. Obviously a nice 1-2 for them at home, their first 1-2 at the British Grand Prix since 2000, I believe, and the first win since that epic win by Lewis Hamilton in 2008. Norris obviously getting that win. It's the 25th time a British driver has won the British Grand Prix, and Norris is the 13th different British driver. So I mean, I think going into the weekend, there was the big expectation, wasn't there? Would Norris be able to deliver? And I think to answer that question, you kind of have to turn instead to Oscar Piastri, who seemed to have the race sewn up, and he finished second. And as a result, championship down to 8 points between them two at the halfway stage. The penalty, I mean, let's get into it. The penalty, the decision. So, printed off the rules because they were made available by the FIA. Thank you very much for that. And this is the point, obviously, that has been in contention this week. In order to avoid the likelihood of accidents before the safety car returns to the pits, from the point at which the lights on the car are turned out, drivers must proceed at a pace which involves no erratic acceleration or braking, nor any manoeuvre which is likely to endanger other drivers or impede the restart. And as a note, they said the actions of the lead driver in particular can have a significant impact on the safety of the restart procedure. Although the leading car has both the right to dictate pace as well to choose the point at which to accelerate, this does not relieve them of their responsibility to avoid creating a potentially dangerous situation as defined in the code, yada, yada, yada. So, did Oscar Piastri drive erratically? I'm once again saying I'm a McLaren fan, but pretty obviously I'm a McLaren fan. I was watching this race with other McLaren fans as well, and my initial response straight away was, oh, he's going to get a penalty for that. It looked bad, and I don't think this was just because Verstappen made it look worse. I think he got a lot of heat for that, and I don't think that's right, because Piastri broke from 218 kilometers down to 50, I believe it was, kilometers per hour. I think that's pretty open and shut case. 60 psi braking force as well, double what George Russell didn't get a penalty for in Canada. And I think that's Verstappen was quoted as saying, well, if Piastri gets a penalty here, then why didn't George Russell there? And I think it's a very different situation. I do like the caveat that McLaren said that, very much like Canada, the lights on the safety car turn off at the final sector, and that's when they announced the safety car in this lap. Now, like Canada, the last sector is very short. It's effectively one corner before they put the throttle down coming out of Stowe or going into Stowe corner. So Piastri doesn't have long to let the safety car go ahead, because if anyone remembers the Formula 2 race from a few years ago, Nobuharu Matsushita got a significant penalty. He was banned from at least one race for going in Azerbaijan on the start straight before realizing he was going to overtake the safety car, and he had to stomp on the brakes, and about 4 cars speared off the track and hit the wall in avoidance. And yeah, there's a reason that they have to let the safety car go. They can't overtake it before it gets to the pit lane. So the problem for me is that he accelerates and then brakes, and I think he just got that slightly wrong. The interesting point was that he said, I did the same 5 laps earlier. Now, I thought he was talking about on the laps before, and as I said, that when the lights go off, he dictates the pace. So I misunderstood that, but he was talking about the first restart, and I looked, and there's been articles about it since. He did go and stop, not quite as fast. He didn't hit 218. He did slow down. And that actually was when Hulkenberg nearly got taken out, when he almost swiped the back of Lance Stroll and had to take to the grass and avoiding action. So potentially he could have got 2 penalties for it. So he was perhaps lucky, especially when you look at the potential rules for breaking this rule. So driving unnecessarily slowly, erratically, yada yada, as just described, 5-second or 10-second penalty, or a drive-through, or a 10-second stop and go. So they've got the full discretion of penalties there. So if you look at the amount of points that he could have got in his license, you look at what he could have got in the race, like a drive-through or 10-second pit stop, 10-second stop and go penalty. Yeah, I think he can count himself pretty lucky to only get 1 of those penalties given to him as well. It's a lesson he'll take on, and it was actually quite good to see him after the race showing emotion, I felt, as well. Will we see more of this as the championship battle hots up? So moving on to Ferrari, which Hamilton described as hard to drive, which is not a nice compliment from someone who's as successful as Lewis Hamilton. Drove to 4th place, unfortunately ending a run of 12 consecutive podiums at Silverstone. So close to keeping that run going. He pitted with everyone else, running okay. It was unfortunate that he had too much to do to catch Hulkenberg at the end. Leclerc, 14th. He had a really difficult day, obviously starting straight away with that decision to give up starting 6th place and come in and start on mediums instead. It just wasn't the right call, unfortunately. And then we saw him have many adventures after that, a couple of ventures into the gravel, one through the Maggots-Beckett's complex, and a second one going well off at the Stowe corner, probably just to have a look at the Lando stand up close, a bit too close, and cost himself a lot of time. And just as I say, Ferrari, it was difficult to drive. Red Bull. So Verstappen finished 5th. I mean, so much was expected when he got that incredible pole position. As soon as they started to analyse the pole, I kind of thought in my head, maybe he's gone too far with the dry setup and they haven't compromised the qualifying pace enough for Sunday. And I think we perhaps saw some of that. Maybe they relied on Verstappen's driving, because the way he was driving that in the opening exchanges as he battled the McLarens, he really seemed to be really working and overdriving the car. The intermediates sort of held on a lot better than I thought they were. Again, sat with the people I was on Sunday saying those inters aren't going to last. If he keeps driving it like he was driving it, it was phenomenal to watch. But when we see Verstappen at his best driving in the wet like that, normally it's because he's so smooth and he's just getting the car to do what he needs to do. So when you see him sliding the car around as much as he was, you kind of thought he's going to pay for this later on, and perhaps he did. Obviously having that spin on the second restart, and uncharacteristic of Max Verstappen's these sorts of mistakes. Did Piastri braking on the straight before, did that affect him? He said no. I'm going to go and believe him on that it didn't. And yeah, it was just unfortunate timing, because that sent him down to 11th when if he spins 2 laps later, he maybe drops to say 4th, 5th. So just lost lots of track time and then was unable to make the inroads that he could. 5th was probably a good recovery as a result. And talking of struggling, Tsunoda in 15th, and he actually qualified. We started 11th, which isn't bad based on where he's been, where his standard is. So started 11th, got a penalty obviously for a clumsy collision with Oliver Behrman, and just from there, just as I say, 15th and last of the people that finished the race. So not the weekend he was after, but there's some signs, aren't there? There's some signs of recovery and redemption, possibly. On to Mercedes. Russell finished 10th, only 1 point, but again, the gamble from 4th place on the grid. I think that was a bad decision. I don't think there's any way around saying that was a bad decision. And what was more surprising to me, seeing him pit in, was seeing him put on hard tyres. Now, whenever the conditions are mixed like that and they go and gamble and put on tyres, it's pretty much guaranteed, I think, normally in normal races, that they'll put on the soft tyres. Being lap 1, perhaps they thought it's going to be an extended stint, and if we've got to gamble, lose track position, at least let's not do it and have to come in again for another set of tyres once we've burned through the softs. But at least then put mediums on, like Leclerc did. But no, he came put hard tyres on. And I think then the only thing more surprising was that after Russell's come out and driven that lap, or half a lap, Antonelli then pits in at the end of lap 1 and goes, I'll have some hard tyres as well. So they compounded that bad error, that bad judgment, really. Again, another excursion for Russell. Had a bit of a spin, didn't he? Just a really tough day. And then Antonelli's day obviously ended, unfortunately, with Hadjar in the back of his diffuser. So much damage. Watching it go round, thinking he's missing half his diffuser on the right-hand side. So he did well to keep it going, but it was very clear that he was just going to keep tumbling, and Mercedes did the right thing, just pulled him in and said, okay, unfortunate that he had to retire with that much damage to his diffuser, too much to carry on. So on to Aston Martin, and a bit of a mixed bag. Both of them scored points, but Lance Stroll 7th, looked good for a podium at one stage. He was suddenly up there in 3rd place, and you thought, wet weather, Lance Stroll, this typically is actually where he does best, so he got the call right. He benefited from a really good call to put on soft tyres. As I say, when the conditions are like this, you always think soft tyres, they're going to give you the best grip in those greasy, changeable, wet conditions and maintain the temperature the best. So that was a really good call, and he got enough laps on those to actually overcome the 2 pit stops, as opposed to everyone else's 1 pit stop when they changed from inters back to a second set of intermediates. He went obviously inters to softs, back to inters, which triggered another Alonsoism. Did we lose these positions for fun? No, unfortunately, just didn't get the call right. And although he started 7th as opposed to Stroll 17th, he finished 2 places behind him in 9th. So again, more points for him. But when he sees that his teammate starts behind him and finishes ahead, he can't help but think, hang on, why didn't I get the same call that he did? But that's the way it goes sometimes. You gamble when you're running 17th back of the grid. You gamble with things, whereas if you're running the points, you go, no, let's stick with what we got. So perhaps that was what the call came down to. But an unhappy Alonso after that. Alpine, Gasly 6th, a good race for him. Started 8th, had a good race, I've said. Benefited from others gambling, of course, but others did as well. He just seemed to get decisions right, got the conditions right. We didn't see him make too many mistakes in an Alpine that's sort of struggled as of late outside of single lap pace. Colapinto, unfortunately, obviously a DNF, more like a DNS. We never saw him. He was meant to start from the pit lane, and he just never got started. Got here, was it his last race? Now again, Briatore was pretty clear that, yes, we didn't put a time on his contract, or it said 5 races. I can't remember now. So was this his last race? There's lots of talks that they're trying to get Bottas in to race for them, or even now Jack Doohan is now also being touted as making a return. So they've obviously decided that Colapinto maybe was the wrong choice again. But I mean, if you at least give him a car that will actually take part in a race before he decides that that's his last race. But anyway, on to the Hasses. Then Behrman finishing 11th in the wars. Got involved on he started back. Where did he start? 18th. Took the gamble. I'm reading the notes for Ocon. See, Ted Kravitz doesn't do this. It's, we need to pay Ted some real points here. Kudos to Ted for being able to read his own notes properly. Behrman, he started 18th, so took that formation lap gamble on hard tyres as well. But when you start 18th again, rolling the dice doesn't seem as bad, does it? As opposed to starting 4th or 6th on the grid. Managed to get back to 11th, which is pretty decent running, given that he went for a bit of simultaneous spinning with his teammate Ocon, which was, great viral clip. If it wasn't good for their race pace, at least it was good for something. And Tsunoda, he got caught up in a Tsunoda incident as well, which earned Tsunoda a 10-second penalty. I didn't cover that, but yes, Tsunoda getting caught up in that, sending Behrman across. Very smart thinking from Behrman, I thought, to realise what was going on early. He was going to go across is that Woodcote, I think it is, that corner there, and just going, I'm just going to skirt around the barrier here and rejoin on the track. So he didn't lose as much time, perhaps, as if he tried to navigate all the way back round onto the track. And Ocon 13th, he started 14th, involved in that first lap collision that saw Lawson out of the race. So again, he just carried on, drove a half decent race to 13th, but no points for Haas this weekend. Racing Bulls had perhaps a worse weekend. Hadjar, DNF. Lawson, DNF. As I just said, Lawson out on lap 1, out before the race really even started. I don't think he completed sector 1. So not much to say, just unfortunate that collision, just where it happened, was just a natural pinch point. The 3 of them in there, I think it was Ocon was the one that was in the middle, the meat in the sandwich, and basically said, going to try and back out, but it was too late at that point. Caught Lawson, and he was a DNF on lap 1. Hadjar took the formation gamble. He put on medium tyres, which I think was the better of the 2 calls, medium or hard. He pitted for intermediates with everyone else, and then just unfortunately unsighted in that crash from Antonelli. We could see, even from the roll hoop camera, again, the one that's slightly better than the helmet camera, when you're at eye level, just that little bit of difference does improve visibility. But even from there, we could see he just had no way of seeing Antonelli's car until it was too late. And as soon as we saw his car in the wall, I said he's been unsighted there. That's happened on the straight before we get to Copse Corner. So again, just unfortunate for them at Racing Bulls. So then Williams, and honestly, I didn't have many notes for either of these pairs. So Albon finished 8th, Sainz finished 12th. Albon started 13th. We didn't see much of either of them, which is probably quite a good thing on a day like this, because normally they either show you when you're in a wall or spinning and not going where you should be, or you're pitting against the grain or something like that. So yeah, it was a bit strange. I don't remember seeing almost either Williams for this race. So as I say, Albon started 13th, finished 8th, so a couple more good points. Sainz started 9th, finished 12th, so he went the other way. But I think more importantly for Williams at the moment is that they got 2 cars to the finish, so that's good for them, and a couple more points in the bag. So finally, we move on to Sauber. Now let's get Borsaletto out of the way before we move on to the other story, which you may have heard of. Borsaletto DNF took the gamble. He struggled. He crashed. Very costly weekend. We saw him in, I think it was final practice on Saturday morning, also have a spin and a crash and rip the suspension off. So yeah, not his finest weekend. He just really struggled. And I think if there was anyone that you were going to sort of say, look, you've had a difficult weekend up to this point, the track's wet, Bortoleto was probably not the first person I'd say, let's gamble and put some dry tyres on that car and see how it goes, because how it goes is backwards in a wall. So yeah, just unfortunate for him. But of course, the story of the weekend, if it wasn't Lando Norris winning his home race, was Hulkenberg in third place. And I owe him a huge apology, because I've said before, I'm not really sure how he's had a career as long as he's had at times. He's a very solid driver, but I said, is he that person? Is he that guy? And yeah, just wow, just really showing, just keep going. And even in a Sauber, you can get a third and a very formidable result. He benefited from pitting 2 laps before everyone else for a second set of intermediates. So when they all dived in the pits together, he was able to carry on round, and he got the benefit of those fresh intermediates for those 2 laps. So it was a very good call when you're starting 19th on the grid, to suddenly find yourself up in 5th place, inherited 4th when Verstappen spun. And then as soon as the DRS became available, he overtook Stroll and never really looked back. Because if he did, he would have seen Hamilton coming for him and trying to get that 13th podium in a row. But 239 races it took him, and now passes the mantle over to Adrian Sutil for the longest Formula One career without a podium. So congratulations, Hulkenberg. And I mean, all of the stories coming out from this, you know, seeing his daughter on the phone with his teammate Gabby Bortoleto, and the celebration, bringing that trophy home, and just seeing, you know, the 2 McLaren drivers and Nico Hulkenberg up on that podium, not even remembering or knowing that you had to take your helmet up to the cool down room. So thank you to Lando Norris for helping him out. But what a feel good story. And I normally end these reviews by talking about driver of the weekend and highlight of the weekend. And I think what a way to end this review, by saying that Hulkenberg takes both of those, I think, for that third place. Yeah, absolutely phenomenal. So pleased for him. And yeah, we love a shock podium, don't we? I don't think many banked on it being a Sauber at all. So yeah, really great result from a really great weekend. So as I say, that's been my review on my own. Hopefully something more normal next week and more of a podcast. Yes, this vanity project really did just gain a bit more vanity. It's just myself talking to myself and this camera here. But hopefully it's not been too unbearable. Hopefully Ted Kravitz still has his job in a few weeks, and I'm not going to be hounded to take his place. No, he's got that absolutely fine. As I say, he doesn't muddle up his own notes. But yes, if you've enjoyed what I've managed to do tonight, cobble together, and please let me know. Please, do all the liking, the sharing, and telling people that I always ask and feel a bit nervous about asking, and still feel nervous right now about asking. But this has been the Motorsport Review, and wherever you're watching from, whenever you're watching, thank you and have a very good week. Thank you. Goodbye for now.